All right, guys, welcome to episode number 10 of the Base Camp Country podcast. My name is Kix Nelson, and I am here today with super agent Caleb Thorne of Indiana. Caleb, man, how you doing?
That's certain. Doing well. Super agent is certainly a stretch, but we're doing good. We're wrapping up the year here, and things are going well. Looking positive for 2025 coming up.
Caleb is one of the top, matter of fact, he got top sales agent in 2023 for Base Camp Country Real Estate. Is that right, Caleb?
Yes, it is. I was very fortunate to have a good year last year, and we grew on it this year. We're able to sell some more real estate than we did last year, so that's always a good thing. And I'm just looking forward to the future.
Absolutely, man. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, Caleb. How long you been in real estate? What got you into real estate? And kind of give us a little bit of your background there.
So that's kind of a long story. I started out when I was young. So I originally graduated from Bedford North Lawrence High School here in Southern Indiana. I originally went to school to be a law enforcement officer. I went there for a year at Vincennes University and was on the golf team there for a short stint. And realized that that wasn't really my calling in life. And so I decided to go up to a school called Lincoln Tech, which is a trade school. Got my degree in diesel technology and applied sciences. And it was kind of funny. Came home about a month before graduation, and I told my mom and dad that I don't think this is what I want to do with my life. So to their surprise, they said, well, that's fine, but you're finishing school, which I did. And then, so I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then all I knew is I wanted to get into the outdoor industry, whether that was, working with farmers or working with hunters. And I think this is kind of the best of both worlds. I spent about a year at another company working as basically, my title was field assistant, but basically I was doing, all the stuff to get a listing ready before it hit the website. So I was out taking pictures, doing write-ups, doing all that kind of stuff. And then I spent about a year there and then got my license and I joined the team here at Base Camp Country Real Estate. Tom James offered me the job and I believe I was actually his first hire. So that's kind of fun. But so been here since the beginning, went through the first orientation and it's just, we hit the ground running.
How long have you been with Base Camp, did you say? I'm sorry if I missed that.
Well, it had been, I believe, not 2019. I think it was April. I could be wrong by that month, but I believe April of 2019. So going on 5 years.
5 years. Awesome, man.
Yes, sir.
Well, you are based down in Southern Indiana. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We're in the limestone capital of the world here in Lawrence County.
Lawrence County. Okay. And what area do you
Yes,
cover there in Indiana? What's your counties there?
Well, I've got 11. So I got Lawrence County, Greene County, Daviess County, Jackson County, Washington, Scott, Orange, Harrison, Crawford, Clark, and I think that covers it. So I've got a pretty good stretch around here that I cover. I believe I said Washington County. Don't remember if I did, but yeah, cover a pretty good chunk of Indiana here in the south central part.
Your family has quite the history of agriculture and being in business in that area. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I guess it all kind of started with my great grandpa. He had a farm here in Lawrence County that, the house is still in the family. My cousin owns the house and 12 acres where that was, and he owns, I think, 130 acres of the original farm. A lot of it has, been sold off at this point. But he was a butcher. He was a butcher. He cut up meat, sold meat. He also had a Hereford herd of cattle, and also had dairy cattle, raised a little bit of everything. And then after, he was gone, my grandfather and my great uncle, they took over everything and they had cattle and then they had the butcher shop and then eventually grew into being a grocery store. And then after that was all kind of wrapped up, bigger grocery stores, back in the day, every street corner had a grocery store.
Yeah.
But now it's all commercialized. It's, we got JC Foods, Myers, Walmart, so that took a lot of mom and pops out. But then my grandfather had a, bicycle shop. And this, there's been, the majority of my family has been in business here in Bedford, even in other parts of Southern Indiana as well, since I believe I've got this time right, but I believe since 1908. We've been in business here.
That is a long time, man.
Yep. And then, I grew up, small farm. Dad had cattle here and there. He's got cattle now. And my uncle had a rather, large herd of Hereford cattle. And so, I kind of, just grew up all around it, nothing too huge as far as the agriculture stuff goes, but I definitely grew up in it. And now I'm, happy to have my own farm and raising, my son and have my wife at my farm. And then we got cattle. So it's fun,
Yeah, I was going to say,
we love it down here.
you just kind of recently got into the cattle business yourself, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. Haven't sold my first calf yet. I started the hard way. I bought heifers and I raised them and then got them bred. And so our first calves are due the first week of January.
Nice. Not
So
too
it's been a
far
little
off.
bit of a process, but no, our first calf's due in January. So it was definitely a learning process and it's been fun.
How many head of cattle you got?
I've just got 5 right now,
Okay.
but we've got about a 30-acre farm. So in all reality, I'm never probably going to have 100 head of cattle. So, but what we've done, when we bought our farm, there was only about 5 to 6 acres of open ground right there by the house. And so we fenced that in and we got that in pasture. And a lot of the rest of the farm it has been grown up. It was a cattle farm back in the day. And so what we've been doing this last year is we've been doing a lot of stripping. I shouldn't say stripping, but clearing the ground and trying to get it back into pasture what it's supposed to be. And we're going to get that fenced in. I would say, realistically, I hope to have 15 to 20 head of cattle. I don't want it to rule my life.
Yeah.
The real estate is kind of my number one priority. So I'm going to be doing it more for hobby and just, hopefully to raise my kid around it. Hopefully he wants to do 4-H stuff. And, I didn't do that whenever I was a kid. So hopefully I can kind of live through them. I wish I would have done that stuff back in the day. And selfishly, I kind of want him to do that.
Yeah. I hear you, man. Good luck. That's all I can say. There's a bunch of stuff I want my kid to do. Didn't happen. So
yeah. Whatever he wants to do, we're going to support him. So
mine's 19 years old now, man. So I'm pretty much, it's kind of like whatever. He's going to do whatever he wants to do.
Man, you're old. I didn't realize that you're that old.
Yeah, I am, buddy. I'm 43 years old. So yeah, I'm old, man.
Gosh,
I don't look like
I
it.
feel old and I'm 28 years old. No, that beard hides a lot of it.
Oh, Caleb, what kind of land do you guys mostly deal with in your area over there? Are you dealing with a lot of timberland, a lot of ag land? What do you got?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a mix of everything down here in southern Indiana. We got rolling topography with a lot of recreation ground. We also got a bunch of agriculture ground. What I've noticed here in the last year is I've been selling, a lot more agriculture ground here lately. I still love the recreation ground, don't get me wrong, but that just seems the way the trend's been this year.
Selling more ag land than anything else up there.
Yep. And I love it. I love dealing with farmers. It's, I kind of feel like they speak my language and I speak their language. And I love getting in the truck with them and driving around looking at their farm.
Absolutely, man. Well, we're the exact opposite in my area, man. We're selling mostly recreational ground, hunting ground, and a lot of homesteading ground. People wanting that 3 to 5 acres so they can build a little homestead on it or whatever. And that's kind of what we see. And we're not in big ag country over here in Southwest Missouri anyway. We do have some ground around here, but nothing like what you guys have up there.
Yeah. It's really interesting just to go county to county and see the difference. And even looking at a map, just at an overview of it, where you're like, man, this county is just chock full of timber ground, where in Lawrence County, it has a bunch more agriculture and even more in Jackson County. And so it's really interesting to look at that stuff and just kind of break it down.
You go east of me here and it's nothing but timber ground. You go a little bit just west of me here and there's a lot of agricultural ground over there.
Yep. That hunt stand app comes in pretty handy, doesn't it?
Oh man, I love Hunt Stand. I use it all the time.
Yeah, that's what's awesome about it is, I've got a side-by-side and on it has a little phone holder and I just put up Hunt Stand on it, set it right there. And then while I'm with clients, they can see if they follow that dot, that is right where we're at. And you can see the property boundary and it just works out perfect.
Pretty handy, man. Pretty handy. I use it every day, literally every day. Well, Caleb, tell us a little bit about your family, man. You're a new dad here recently.
Yeah, we got a 1-year-old. It's been an adventure. I've been married to my wife for, I think, 3 years now.
You better.
We got a 1-year-old boy. We got a 1-year-old little redheaded boy just like me, and he is keeping us on our toes. He loves to go out and ride on the tractor with Dad and feed the cows. It's been a blast.
That's your only one? Just a 1-year-old?
Yeah, for now. I think we'll probably have some more in the future, but I guess time will tell.
Well, there you go.
I'll have as many as she wants me to give her.
So Caleb, I don't know about you, but you know, in my area, I've been dealing with a lot of these, I guess I'll call them land flippers. People are calling and, trying to get these people to sell their properties for extremely cheap. You guys dealing with much of that up there?
Unfortunately, we are. That's becoming more and more prevalent. And, if you're listening to this and you're getting these letters in the mail, throw them away and give me a call. These people are writing you offers for pennies on the dollar. It's, I don't want to say it's a scam, but it's a sleazy scheme is what it is. They're taking advantage of people that just don't know any better. And so odds are they're going to buy that property and they're going to relist it and they're going to sell it for 3 to 4 times more than what they're paying you. And they're going to try to call other real estate agents to get them to list it. Personally, I will not work with them. I've worked with one once in the past. And after that, I found out that they made 10 times what they paid for that, almost 10 times what they paid for that property. And it just didn't sit right with me. And I thought, you know what? I want to help the people that put in the work on that property and they invest in that property and they maybe have lived there or had a farm there for the last 30, 40 years. I want to help those people make the profits. And, for some reason, the whole land flipping thing just doesn't sit right with me. I just feel like it's taking advantage of people. And, it's obviously it's not illegal to buy a property and sell it.
Sure.
But it doesn't mean it's right necessarily. And I think that's the thing. I think just, like I said, people just don't know what their farms are worth. And they think, well, my dad bought this in, 1985 for $200 or $300 an acre, and these people are offering me $1,000. Well, the fact of the matter is those people they'll buy it for that amount of money, but they're going to sell it for $7,000 to $8,000 an acre if it's agriculture, or $4,000 to $5,000 an acre if it's recreational and timber ground.
Yeah. Yeah, it happens all the time, but one of the biggest ones I've seen happen just 4 or 5 miles down the road from me, about 280 acres or so. One of these flippers bought it, literally turned around and relisted it a month later for $2.4 million, which was almost more than double what he paid.
Jeez.
Yeah, he paid
Yeah, that's unfortunate, and sadly, that's happening every single day. Not just in Indiana. This is happening across the country where people are getting taken advantage of. I think it's as simple as give your local land professional a call and just say, hey, can you get me a ballpark number? Is this really worth $1,000 an acre? And I'm going to shout, no, it's worth a lot more. And, I'll make you a lot more money than that.
Yep. And everybody knows here a while back, we had to deal with this whole NAR thing and, people hating on real estate agents saying they're not worth their money and gold. I promise you, a real estate agent who knows what they're doing is worth their weight in gold, and they will get you more for your property than anybody else, whether
Absolutely.
You're for sale by owner or any of that. You're going to get more using an agent, I promise you.
Yeah, absolutely. I've dealt with a lot of people that have listed their properties for sale by owner. And one thing that just because they don't do it every day, one thing I think I tell them, you might get 20 showings listing it for sale by owner, where I might get 4 or 5 people to show it to. And the reason being is because I'm vetting the clients first. I make sure they're either pre-qualified or they got the cash in the bank to buy the property. Because if they're not either one of those, they're not qualified buyers. And I think that when you list for sale by owner, you get a lot of that, the tire kickers. And so I feel like I bring the serious buyers to the table.
Yeah.
Or any agent does, for that matter.
One thing I've noticed about people that are selling for sale by owner is, let's say you list your property for sale by owner and somebody buys that property, right? Well, guess what?
Mm-hmm.
They just bought that property from you, and who do you think they're going to call the first time they have a problem with that property?
Yep, absolutely.
And so they're going to be bothering the previous homeowner about any issues that arise, and you don't want to deal with that, I promise you.
Yep, absolutely.
I want you to talk to us a little bit about how you accomplished being the number 1 sales agent for Base Camp Country last year.
Blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, and I found a lot of nuts last year or in 2023. Really, I think a lot of it is just hard work and grit. I've got goals that I want to accomplish, and, I got to show up every day and make those phone calls and be in constant communication with my clients. But really the big thing is the clients. I've got very loyal people that want to work with me, and I'm very fortunate to have those people, supporting my business. And really it's just putting a lot of miles on the truck and, showing up every day at the office and putting the time in.
Yeah, man. All about the work. A
Yep. Yep. And a little bit of luck.
little bit of luck and a lot of word of mouth, man. Word of
Yep.
mouth goes a long ways.
Absolutely.
Let's talk hunting, man. Everybody loves our hunting podcast.
Yeah.
We love to talk hunting around here.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing to hunt, man?
Yep. Whitetail deer. I'm not a big turkey hunter. I've duck hunted a few times. I really do enjoy it, but that is a very expensive hobby from what I've found out.
Yeah.
But really deer hunting, that's my bread and butter. I love it.
You guys in the middle of the season right now?
Yeah, it's winding down. This is the last week of gun season here in southern Indiana. And unfortunately, I haven't hunted a whole lot this year. Maybe a handful of times. I was able to shoot a doe a few evenings ago, but this year has been busy with work. And, I've got a little one, and I've got, obviously a few cows I have to take care of. And so that's taken up a lot of time, but I love going out and just sitting there and watching the deer work in and out of the food plot. And I just think it's a blast.
Oh yeah. Are you an archery guy? Do you archery hunt or?
I do. I've got a bow that I take out and off bow season with it. But when gun season comes around, I pull out the rifle. So it's time to kill something at that point.
Put some meat in the freezer, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do any turkey hunting?
I've killed a few turkeys, but I wouldn't claim myself as a turkey hunter. I've got some buddies. Once they tag out, they'll take me out and they'll call for me, and really we're just going out. I think the majority of we're just catching up. We've all got our lives now. From I go out with my high school buddies, and we've all got lives now. So we don't go out as often, but I think once they tag out, we go and we just go have a good time. Just for old time's sake. And if I get one, I get one, and if I don't, I don't. So I certainly enjoy it, but it's not my first pick.
Sure.
By any means.
Yeah, I'm the same way, man. I'm a big whitetail hunter. I turkey hunt, but I'm not into it like some of these guys,
Yeah, and if anybody's listening to this, you want to get me on a big old tom, I'm not going to say no.
Yeah, me neither. Call me up. Well, Caleb, you say you're a big whitetail hunter, man, so let's talk about it. What's the biggest whitetail you've ever killed?
Well, that would be last year. I got very fortunate. I believe it was on November 30th of last year. I'd have to look back in pictures just to be sure. But like I said earlier, sometimes a blind squirrel finds a nut from time to time, and that's what happened. I shot a big mainframe 8-pointer, and he ended up on the dot. Tom James can verify this. He grossed 161 inches. And I believe I'd have to look back at my scoring sheet. I think he netted 157 and 5/8 or 3/8, somewhere in that ballpark. But I don't care about the whole net thing. I like to see how much bone is on that deer.
161, man. That's what I counted as.
Yeah. I don't know. I told my wife, I don't think she quite understood why I was freaking out the way I freaked out whenever I shot this deer. But I told her, I said, I might one day shoot a deer that scores more than this deer, but I'll never shoot a deer this big ever again. It takes a lot of antler to have a mainframe 8-pointer be 161 inches. And so, I've got him hanging up in the house. I don't know how happy my wife is that it's hanging up in the house. I think she wants me to bring it here to my office, but I had to keep that one at home.
Yeah. Oh, I'll hang all mine in the house, dude. My wife loves it.
I've got a few in there. It took some convincing, though.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to get up and see that deer, man. I want to see that 161-inch 8-point.
Well, yeah, he's a big one. I don't, I was really fortunate, and it's funny how it all kind of went down. I and not a whole lot of people know this about me, but I'm colorblind, and I struggle seeing stuff that are very close in color to each other. I'm not black and white by any means, but there's a lot of if stuff different shades really throw me off. And whenever I was hunting this evening in my food plot, and it was nearing the end of season, and we had just got through some brutally cold days, and I hunted hard, and I wasn't seeing anything. And I went home and I told my wife, I said, I'm done for this year. I can't do it anymore. And the next day it warmed up pretty good. And, I don't think really science backs this theory much, but I was talking to Tom and I said, with this, with it warming up a little bit, deer might get up on their feet. He goes, yeah, that might be a good idea to go give it a try.
Yeah.
And but it was overcast that day. And so the sky's kind of grayish looking. And so I'm out there and sun's starting to set and I've got a field full of does. And I thought, I'm out here, this is probably the last time I'm going to shoot a doe. So I waited for last light. And so I'm in my scope and I'm about to pull the trigger. The safety's off the gun and I see this rack pop up behind the deer, behind this doe. And I was like, oh, okay. And I thought there's a buck that he was a 3-year-old that I called Tipsy. And the reason I called him that is because when he was a 2-year-old, when he was in velvet, he snapped both the tips of his main beams off. And so I called him Tipsy, and we had him in there as a 3.5-year-old. And so I see this rack, and I'm like, oh, it's just Tipsy. And so I go back to this doe, and then for some reason, something in me is like, take another look at that deer. And I see that he is hobbling on 3 legs. And I thought, well, shoot, he's hurt. And so I'll say this, I completely use this as an excuse to shoot this 3.5-year-old deer, what I thought was a 3.5-year-old deer.
Yeah.
And so he's up against the wood line. I'm colorblind. It's overcast. Sun's coming down. It's just a whole different mix of things that aren't in my favor.
Right.
And so, all I see is he's a mainframe 8-pointer, and I thought that's Tipsy. So I see he's limping, and so I used it as an excuse, and I shot him. I dropped him. And then, so I called my buddy up, Cameron. He was the best man at my wedding. And I called him. He's kind of the guy, I think every one of us have that one buddy that we always call right after we shoot a big buck.
Yeah.
And so I called him and I said, well, I just shot a deer. And he goes, well, you don't sound real excited. I said, I probably shouldn't have shot him. It's just a 3.5-year-old. And he's like, well, he said, what deers? I said, I think it was Tipsy. And so I waited till it was dark and I got out of that blind, and all I had with me was a phone flashlight. And I'm sitting there on speakerphone with Cameron, and this deer was 100 yards away, 120 yards away. And I'm walking through the food plot. I'm on speakerphone. And so as I get closer, I kind of see the silhouette of this deer. I'm like, yeah, 100, 30-inch deer, 8-pointer, maybe 130-inch deer. And I get closer, it gets a little bigger. I get closer, it gets a little bigger, and I get up to him, and I just hit my knees. I said, Cameron, you got to get out here right now. I said, I just shot the biggest deer of my life.
Nice.
And I said, usually I get ground shrinkage, not ground growth.
Yeah, I was going to say, it usually gets the opposite.
So it was, and so I hung up with him. I called Tom up, and I said, man, I just shot we called him the ghost buck. I had him on camera as a 4.5-year-old. And I didn't really name him. I just knew he was a good deer. And I would have shot him as a 4.5-year-old. And then I didn't really get any pictures of him till early November. And I didn't know it was him because the picture was blurry. All I could see was, kind of the outline of the deer. And I sent it to Tom. It's kind of blurry. He goes, oh. And so that's the ghost buck. And so we just kind of started calling him the ghost buck. The only reason I knew this deer was still alive is because the neighbor and I have I hunt my wife's family farm. The neighbor to that farm, we have a really good relationship. We send trail camera photos back and forth. And I said, hey, man, you been seeing any big deer? I said, I just got this picture of this one, and I can't tell what he is or who he is. And he said, well, I got this picture, and it was like 30 minutes after this picture was taken, not far from where my picture was taken. And I said, I know that deer. I said, he made it for my show, so I was obviously excited about it. And I didn't neither of us got another picture of that deer. And until, and then I shot him. But what's interesting about it is a lot of my buddies, just to give me a hard time, they said, oh, he probably wasn't even limping. You're just using that, to justify why you thought you shot a 3.5-year-old.
Yeah.
But it was a couple weeks later, another neighbor actually sent me a trail camera video of him limping. And so, but whenever I was skinning him, there was multiple holes in his shoulder area. So he was obviously a bruiser. He was out there fighting other bucks. So, but he was hobbling on 3 legs, and I used that as my excuse to shoot him. So it was kind of funny because whenever I got that video, I sent it to all my buddies and said, see, I wasn't lying about this.
Yeah. It grew real quick.
Yes, he did. Yep.
That's
But,
awesome.
so yeah, I can't sit here and pound my chest and say I was on this deer for 3 weeks. It was truly a blind squirrel finds a nut, and I was that blind squirrel that day, and so I'm very fortunate. But when people ask me about it, I just kind of sit there and laugh because it's like I can't take a whole lot of credit. I got lucky with that deer.
I'm part of a Missouri whitetail deer hunters group on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
This guy yesterday, it was hilarious, man. He made a post and he said, I got off work at 3:30 yesterday. This was yesterday afternoon. He said, I got off work at 3:30 yesterday afternoon, hauled butt home, was in my stand at 3:45, and 15 seconds later, this monster buck comes walking out and he shot it.
Hey man, you got to take the wins when you can get them.
Yeah. I'm like, man, I've spent the better part of the last 3 weeks in the deer woods, and I haven't seen nothing worth shooting, dude. Like that, I can give me a little bit of that luck, man.
That's been the story of my life this year. I've been out, like I said, only a handful of times, but it's been slow this year. But only the biggest buck I've seen was a 4-pointer.
Dude, I took literally the last 2 weeks off and hunted every single day, man. And it's been rough. Of course, we got the weather's been a mess and all kinds of stuff around here, but
yep. But hey, you know what? 2 weeks off deer hunting is better than, 2 weeks. Oh, well, I shouldn't say I like my job, but most people, that's better than going to work.
Oh yeah. Yep, absolutely. Well, while we're on this hunting topic, man, we got our quick draw questions. Are you ready for that?
Oh boy, here we go.
So I got 20 questions I'm going to ask you. The best thing you can do is just fire off your quick questions and we'll go from there. Or I'm sorry, your quick answers, and then we'll go from there. All right. Question number 1. What do you always bring for good luck?
Oh, a couple jackets I wear that I've always felt like I've had better luck in them. And then I actually carry this case knife. It ain't a pocket knife unless it's a case knife.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's only probably been a handful of deer I've shot in my life that I did not skin my deer without a case knife. I love them.
Yep, they're awesome. One rule that you would add to hunting regulations?
That's a good one, Kix. I don't know if I would add a whole lot of rules. I think the state of Indiana does an excellent job. Different states may vary. I might have an opinion in one state versus the other. But I think the state of Indiana does an excellent job, and I think it needs to stay the way it is. So, really, I don't think anything.
Most unique animal you've ever encountered in the wild?
Oh, that's easy. I was hunting behind my parents' house one night when I was probably a middle school or young or early on in high school, and I saw a peacock of all things, a peacock. And what's funny about it is there's a chance that they could have been my grandpa's peacocks because my grandpa lived a few miles up on the highway and he had peacocks throughout my whole childhood. And one night they all escaped. Nobody could find them. So there's a chance it could have been my grandpa's peacocks. But I saw a few of them, and that I thought, you got to be kidding me.
Next question. Best method for planting food plots?
So I personally don't have one, but I think, the good old Furminator is a really good way to do it. I do it a little bit more old school just because I haven't bought a Furminator. I like a good clover base, but then so what I do is in, early September, I go out with a disc and like to lightly scratch it up, and then I'll plant some, turnips and, radishes and, a good mix of different stuff. I think that's worked for us, but I do think the number one thing is you gotta soil test and see what your soil needs, and I think that's the biggest thing you can do to have a successful food plot.
Yep, I agree. Favorite hunting related app or website?
Huntstand, absolutely. That or Basecamp Country Realestate.com.
Yeah, I love it. How do you balance hunting with other responsibilities?
That can be tricky sometimes. I know a lot of agents, they take a lot of time off in the deer season, and it sounds like you do too, and that's all right. I'm sure you're taking phone calls, and I think everybody should still be taking phone calls in deer season.
Oh, yeah.
But I look at it like this, God, family, work, and then play can come after, and I think that's the way it has to be.
Yeah, when I say I took the last 2 weeks off, I mean I wasn't in the office.
No, I know. No, I know what you mean.
I still take
I
phone
know what you
calls,
mean.
man. I still do what I gotta do.
Yep. Oh yeah, you'd be amazed. One of the biggest perks of having a box blind is shutting those windows, being able to take a phone call.
100%.
You know, especially when you got a closing in a couple days, you got to get stuff ironed out. It works out pretty nice.
Yeah, or like happened to me yesterday, your boss or the owner of your company that you work for calls you, and you better answer that phone call.
Yep. I just hit ignore when Craig calls me. I'm kidding, Craig. I don't do that. I'm always busy when I don't answer.
Yeah, yeah, man. All right, next question here. Any goals for this hunting season?
Have fun.
Love it. What is there a piece of gear that you've always wanted but you don't have yet?
I would say over and under 12 gauge shotgun.
Nice. Favorite brand of hunting boot?
I like lacrosse personally.
Same.
I feel like it's a little bit more of an athletic fit on the feet, and my feet don't hurt nearly as bad after I wear them.
Yep, I agree. I'm a lacrosse guy myself. What do you think is the most overhyped hunting trend?
Tree saddles. No, you know what? I joke with my buddies that have them that they just go up there to swing like a little kid.
Yeah.
But you know what? If it makes you feel comfortable, do it. But yeah, you know, I really, if whatever gets you outdoors, that's what matters. I would say that, and then one thing else, I'll add this to this. The one thing else I really don't care for is, instead of saying nice deer, nice congrats on your buck, we get people that say, well, how old is he?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have him patterned? Did you do this? Did you do this? Just say congrats. That's probably, you know, and everybody wants to criticize everybody. And really, we're just out there to enjoy God's creation and, you know, put some meat on the table, I guess.
Yep.
You know, it's fun to shoot a big buck from time to time. It makes it, you know, I guess that's what keeps us going back, is the deer that we don't, you know, that are, I guess, our target buck, as we like to call it. But really, you know, I just wish we get back to saying good job.
Absolutely, man. How has social media changed hunting?
Kind of what I just said. You know, there's a lot of keyboard warriors out there, unfortunately, and they like to criticize, you know. And I also think that a lot of people do a lot of showing off on social media. And, you know, I think people are different in person than they are behind a keyboard or a phone screen.
Yeah. One thing you never leave behind on a hunt.
Case knife.
Best way to improve soil for food plots.
You got to do a soil test. You know, you got to see what it needs. You know, you got to get the right amount of lime, right amount of fertilizer on it.
Biggest land improvement that you've done that increased wildlife on your property?
I wouldn't say it'd be on my property, because my personal farm is more geared towards agriculture. But I'll give an example of on my wife's family farm. You know, there's a lot of CRP out there. We do food plots, but I think it's every 3 years we go out and we burn all the CRP fields and kind of give it a good reset.
Crossbow or compound bow?
Whatever gets you out there. But for me personally, I shoot a bow.
Bucket list hunting destination?
Alaska. I want to do a fly-in caribou hunt.
That would be awesome.
That is my all-time dream hunt.
All right.
Maybe one day.
What was the first piece of land that you ever bought?
Farm we're living on right now, you know, I don't anticipate ever selling that place. It's just under 30 acres. It's 5 minutes from her family, 10 minutes from mine. My wife and I actually bought it together back in 2019. I hadn't even sold my first farm yet. And so it was a risk, but it was the best decision I've ever made. We love it out there. But yeah, just under 30 acres, and I don't anticipate ever selling it. I'd love to buy more one day.
Hold on to it as long as you can, brother. Caleb, one more question for you. Favorite hunting memory?
Well, it'd probably be the day I shot my very first deer. It was 2006, and I was 10 years old. It was on my birthday. And so it's kind of interesting. You know, I said earlier in this podcast that I was colorblind. Well, being colorblind is kind of a unique thing. You know, I can see a lot of movement. You know, now it just depends on the time of day, you know, and this deer had come out on the edge of my parents' cattle pasture, and I was sitting there, and this buddy staying with my dad, and I said, "Dad, there's a deer out there." And he said, "No, there's not." I said, "Dad, there is a deer out there." And then he said, "Caleb, there is not a deer out there." I said, and finally he said, "You know what? Go ahead and shoot it if you see it, if you think there's a deer out there." So I stood up and I blasted that thing and dropped it. But And so I rack another, and Dad said, "Oh, it's gonna die." And so, of course, what happens? It jumps up and it runs, and we could, we found blood, but blood dried up, and so Dad's like, "You know what? Let's go out to breakfast, and we'll come back out." And I said, "All right." So we went to this place. It's torn. The building's torn down, unfortunately now, but a little, hole in the wall called Golden Gables. And I remember my uncle was there, my grandpa when he was still living, he was there, and my other uncle and my cousin. And that's just, that's one of those days I won't forget. Just probably a little bit of everything. I was with my dad, my very first deer, just a memory going to breakfast with my grandpa, and so we went back out, we found the deer, and so yeah, that's probably my favorite memory in the outdoors, something I'll probably hold on to for the rest of my life.
I love it, man. That's a great story. Great story. Well, Caleb, that's all the quick draw questions I got for you, brother. Made it through it.
All righty. All right.
Well, we got a pretty good show here, man. You got any final thoughts you want to talk about?
Yep.
Or stuff you want?
Well, I got one quick draw question for you.
All right, let's hear it, brother.
Who is better at being interviewed, me or Craig?
Brother, I'm sorry, but you get second place on this one. I don't care what the real.
Oh, Kix, I think I see a little brown on your nose.
Well, hell yeah.
All right. I get it. You got to be nice to the boss.
Well, hell yeah. I'm not trying to get fired, brother. Good question.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on here, Kix. I'm going to get off here, and I think I'm going to go make some phone calls and try to drum up some more business.
Yeah, man. Thanks for taking time out of your day to do this podcast. It took us a while to get you on here, but man, great show. Thanks for coming on.
Yep. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, follow Caleb Thorne on Facebook. Caleb Thorne, Base Camp Country Real Estate in Indiana. Search for that.
And you also find me at my Instagram handle is Basecamp Caleb.
Basecamp Caleb. Follow Caleb on Facebook, Instagram, anywhere you can find him. And don't forget to follow Basecamp Country at Basecamp Country on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We're everywhere, guys, and even on TikTok. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, don't forget, here at Basecamp Country, it's more than just dirt. It's a lifestyle. Caleb, thank you very much. We will see you guys again next week right here on the Basecamp Country Podcast.